Welcome to Just WannaQuilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend Guard, your host. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School and a LePage faculty fellow at the A.B. Friedman School of Business at Tulane, and I just want to quilt. So today, Laurie Aaron Hird joins us. You know her as the author of The Farmer's Wife. The author of The Farmer's Wife is here. How cool is that? We talk about how it started, what she does, a lot about copyright. It's so insanely cool.
I'm Laurie Aaron Hird, and I am calling from rural Shullsburg, Wisconsin.
And what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
That would be my grandmother. She died when I was 8 years old, and since my father was her only living relative, we got all her stuff. So one thing that I got was a quilt. And I barely remember it. It was squares, and it was a tied quilt, and I had it for a fairly short length of time. My mother came into my room one time and went, "Oh, my goodness, the quilt's falling apart." And then it disappeared, and I have no idea what happened to it. I think it was a 30 speed sack quilt is what I think it was.
Really?
And that made an impression on me. Years later, when I saw 30s fabric, I got really excited, and I went, it seemed like I'd seen it all my life, and I think that's where it came back from.
Yeah, that's right. You, I emailed you and asked if you'd be willing to come on our little podcast, and you were so gracious and said yes. And what you are very famous for is the Farmer's Wife sampler quilts, the 1920s quilt and the 1930s quilt. So I would love to start with your journey on that and tell us a little bit about how that all started.
Well, that started actually about 25 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a strange story. I was living in a small town, and I so wanted to live in the country. So I used to check out books about homesteading. And one time I came across this book called Do You Want Your Daughter to Marry a Farmer? I thought it was hysterical. I checked it out. It was so funny. I checked it out, and all I got was this small little booklet, 42 pages long, I think it was. And it was a set of letters from a contest from the Farmer's Wife magazine. What they were trying to do is find out if women in 1922 enjoyed their life on the farm. That was their whole point. So they wrote these letters, and they printed the top 65 in this booklet. I thought the letters were great. I never shared them with anyone except some of my older daughters. I copied them, I stuck them in my file cabinet, and there they sat for about 12 years. And then this was in 2007, I'd had a foot injury. And I don't know if you've ever seen one of those big black walking boots.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, the doctor gave me actually one of those on my birthday. I wasn't happy. I was really crabby, and I did not. It was in May, and I really wanted to do stuff that summer, and I knew I was going to be sitting in a recliner, which is what I ended up doing. And so I started praying that the Lord might give me something to do while I sat on this recliner. Well, a few weeks later, I was at a fabric store, and I saw a book called The Civil War Diary Quilt Book. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was a great book by Rosemary Young. And what she did is she paired a Civil War Diary quilt letter, a Civil War Diary letter with a quilt block. And I thought it was fascinating. And on my long drive home, because we do live in the country, I started thinking maybe I could pair those letters that I had in that file cabinet with farm or nature-themed blocks.
Very
and I started working on it and found out that 1922 was the last possible year of copyright-free material at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was able to use it, and that's how it started. I had never any aspirations of writing a book of children.
That is so amazing. That's so amazing. Okay, so, and you knew that about the copyright. You've just made my day on like this hugest way. Okay, so, so the blocks, where did the blocks come from? And you did the 1920s sampler first, is that right? Because of the copyright stuff, you decided, tell me about how you decided what to do for that 1920s, that first book.
Well, what I did is I took the letters. I used Rosemary Young's book as basically a template for what I could do. And I estimated the stories, how many pages of stories I could do. I divided that up. Then I went and looked at a small quilt block encyclopedia. I have since from that book on, I have used Barbara Blackman's encyclopedia quilt blocks, which is my favorite quilt book.
Yeah,
but
it's right, it's the best.
It's a great book. But in those days, I had a much smaller one, so I had a more limited selection of what I could do. And I just did the best I could from the letter and paired the block with the letter.
And so you decided, which is so interesting, is that you kind of renamed the block with the person whose letter it is. Like you match the block and the letter, and then you name it that name. Is that right?
In the 30s book, it's really interesting because where most of my material comes from is the Farmer's Wife magazine. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know why, but they often did not print people's names. I don't know if they were shy or it was just the sign of the times. So I don't know. In my 19th book and in the 20s book, I have almost no real authors to those. So what I did with the 30s book is I found classic quilt blocks because I'm not a designer. I don't design quilt blocks. My point is to bring the old ones back. Mm-hmm. And so I found quilt blocks with women's names in them, or like the word mother. Mm-hmm. And then I deleted the other words around those names. So I just ended up with women's names. So I was pretending that this woman's name wrote the letter.
Got it. I love it. It's so cool. And then the block, so it's such a beautiful book. I have the 1930s. I don't have the 1920s book. We'll get that one shortly. But so for those that, okay, so we're kind of, there's a lot, I have 1,000 questions for you. So they have beautiful, each page with the letter has the block. Did you make those blocks? Did you make each of the blocks as you went so that you had the image of it? So how did you, tell me more about your process of what you did to make this beautiful thing.
Okay, what I did is I have the quilt block encyclopedia, but I also have the Electric Quilt computer program.
Right.
And there is no way I could have produced the book without that program, just because I have to send in these files to the company. So what I do is I get them from Electric Quilt. I print them off, and Electric Quilt gives you the option of using templates or rotary cutting or foundation patterns.
Right.
I use templates, but what I do is I put a piece of cardstock in my printer. And anyone can do this. You can do this with the CD from the book, or you can do this with Electric Quilt. But I finally figured this one out, and it works great. You just use a piece of cardstock, and then you cut out your templates. When you're done with them, you throw them in the trash, and you're done.
Yeah, that's great. We did that. I did that. I followed that direction and put it on cardstock, and it's perfect. It's easy to get out. They stay together. I mean, we have kits from paper pieces, and I love paper pieces, so don't get me wrong, but it was really nice to not have to dig around for the different little bits, I have to say. It just travels well in a nice way. So, yeah. So tell me, so do you feel like, let me ask you a couple of copyright questions, and then I have so many questions for you. So the letters themselves from the 1930s are from where? Because these are not the first ones were from that book. Where did these letters came from the farm. And did you get permission, or did you do any kind of copyright search for trying to figure out the status of these letters?
Okay, so once I started getting involved with this magazine, when I first originally copied my letters in the mid-1990s, we weren't on the internet. I didn't even know what the internet was. Yeah. So after pretty much the Farmer's Wife book came out 10 years ago, I started collecting Farmer's Wife magazines.
Yeah.
And there's about 400 available. I've got about 300 of them.
Amazing.
And so I got all of these letters from the 1930 issues. The Farmer's Wife magazine was sold to the Farm Journal in 1939. So I had all the 1930s. Now, copyright was fascinating because the web publishing company sold, as I said, to the Farm Journal in 1939. But we tried contacting the Farm Journal, and they will not return any phone calls. We
Really?
tried for several years.
That's
no, they will not return any.
That's so bizarre to me.
I did.
You're putting
No,
them
I did.
In this crazy way.
I tried, my publishing company tried, no go, ever.
Wow.
And I did an extremely amateurish job of trying to understand copyright because I think that's very important. I've had problems with copyright with my books, and so I'm much more aware of it. But if I understood it when the Farm Journal purchased the Farmer's Wife magazine, I thought they had to also, well, let's put it this way, they had to hold on to paperwork to prove that they bought this magazine and the rights. Could I be correct on that?
Well, I mean, it's really interesting. Right? So do they have to prove that they're the owners and did they do an assignment to the Copyright Office? There's all kinds of things. And a lot of times people are like, we don't have to prove anything, right? Which is like, well, that's not helpful. But you're not trying to be mean. You're just trying to get the you're trying to be a good copyright citizen. So it's very odd, that people aren't more receptive when you do contact them.
Yes, and that actually kept me from doing anything with this for a long time because I didn't, I couldn't get anywhere on the copyright, so that was stopping me. So what we ended up doing is my publishing company is liable for the copyright at this point. That's how I ended it. That if there is a copyright problem, that they will handle it.
That they will handle it, they're right, because you didn't get response back. It felt like it was a pretty safe bet that they, so interesting, very interesting.
It's not the way I would have liked it.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have it clearly stated, but the book has been out for more than 4 years and nobody has said anything, so that's how we've left it. Like I said, it's not the way I would have preferred it.
Right, and you did your due diligence. You tried your very best. It wasn't like,
I
think you could make an argument that what you're doing is transformative, right? So you're taking little bits of the newspaper and these letters and you're putting them into a different context. And so that you could make a fair use argument that it's transformative, like when you put a poster into a book and talk about that book. So, I think you did great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm curious. We're going to have to see. This is not very hard-hitting journalism because now I'm super curious about if they registered it or renewed it. I'll have to look in. I'll tell you what I find out on the copyright side. They may not be returning. Yeah, I can do that for you. I'm going to have to do that because I'm too curious. So,
okay.
Yeah. And we have a database that we can, one of the problems with determining the copyright status of these materials for a very long time was that it was very hard to search the records. And in the spring, we made a database of all the records so that we could search them. So it makes it much, much easier to just put and that wasn't available. It's still not really available. We just have it. So, but yeah, I'll take a look and see what I find and give you a report back. So, so interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that would, and I think it'd be interesting, right? to know what they did and didn't do. Okay, so you have created a crazy sensation. So those that don't know what I'm talking about, if you're listening, just put in farmer's wife 1920s, farmer's wife 1930s. There are sew-alongs, paper pieces. You can do it as paper pieces. You can do it as foundation piecing. And again, for people who don't understand those two terms, one is like you take a little cardboard piece and you wrap the fabric around it and you hand sew it. The other one is it's like a sheet of paper and you sew on it and it's like count by, like color by number, but it allows you to make little intricate perfect pieces. So tell me about that journey. So you're in your car, you're driving home, you're like, I've got this idea. How did it turn into this? Like you're like a thing, right? Like this whole thing is a thing. How did that happen?
I have absolutely no idea, really. I mean, I didn't, when I started this, I had two relatives that I rarely spoke to who were quilters, and I didn't even know any quilters at that point. So I really just kind of did it. I'm really not sure. Rosemary Young's had 6-inch blocks. I decided to go with 6-inch blocks. I was going to do a straight set with the 1920s, but at the last minute I turned it around and put them on point. I was really glad I did. I really liked that look better.
Yes.
But I have absolutely no idea how it all happened after that.
So,
I really don't.
Okay, so you came up with the idea. How did you publish? Like, tell me the journey on the first book. So you're pairing up, you're using not Barbara Brackman, but kind of like that. You're using common blocks, putting them with the letters. Are you making them while you're doing this as well? Are you making the blocks as you're making?
I would sew it. Is this what I'm not sure. I would sew in the evenings, and because I still had a lot of the children were still living at home.
Yeah.
So I would hand sew those in the evenings, and during the day I would type the letters because I actually kept this whole thing a secret.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I figured I'd rather fail by myself rather than in public. And besides, nobody would have believed it if I'd said I wanted to write a quilt book. I mean, I could just see the kids laughing, going, yeah, right, Mom. So I just decided to do it by myself. I just did the blocks at night, as I said, sewed during the day. And about 10 months later, I presented it to the same publishing company that Rosemary Young's had, and they did accept it then.
Wow. So you presented them with the full book, and they were like, yeah, we'll do this.
Well, they call it a book proposal. I had all of the blocks done. I did not have them set yet.
Yeah. Oh, I totally love it. That's so great. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so you did that, and how was the publishing process for that first time?
So it's basically you end up turning in everything, and then they take the patterns and they redo them on their computer stuff, and then you have to correct any mistakes that were made in the meantime. It's kind of a tedious process.
Interesting.
But it usually takes about a year and a half to get a book published.
Wow. That's
something that a lot of people don't know. It takes a few months at the least to get it printed. Most books with color are printed in the East, and mine were printed in China.
Mm-hmm.
And the files are sent there electronically, but the books have to be returned by boat, by cargo ship.
Yeah.
So it takes a considerable length of time to do that.
Oh my goodness.
There's just a lot of back and forth now. Everything is done on the computer. We don't mail anything back anymore.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. And
there's just correcting and redoing.
Yeah. And then you also have all these other things that happen with this book, right? So you've got the sew-alongs, you've got paper pieces where you can get the templates and the paper, so you don't have to put it onto cardstock. How did that happen? And is your publisher doing that, or are you doing those deals?
Okay, initially for the farmer's wife, there was only templates. And I wanted them put in the back of the book. The publishing company wanted them on a CD. I almost quit over that because I really didn't want the CD. It was really at the beginning of doing something like that. But they ended up winning. They put it on the CD, and I was quite surprised when I found out that they put one template per page. Mm-hmm. I didn't plan that. That wasn't my idea. Yeah.
What did you want?
But they ended up doing that. But what I heard from people after that was, we really want paper piecing foundation patterns done, is what they really wanted. So I did that for my second book. My second book is the Farmer's Wife Pony Club Sampler Quilt. Mm-hmm. And very few, it's not well known. I self-published it, but that is where I originally started putting all the patterns on the CD, because I wanted, even though I don't do it, I wanted people to have the option of being able to sew it in different ways.
Interesting. Okay, cool. How was this? We looked at the CD. We printed everything on the CD to sort of experience what that was, and it's just, you get a lot on the CD because you get for foundation piecing and for paper piecing. It's just a huge amount of files, and it's you could never do, like when you print them out, it's like, oh, because it's like a huge stack.
It is.
You couldn't do that with, the CD is really helpful because you have so much there, It's kind of remarkable.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the Farmer's Pony Wife Sampler and how that was different and why you did self-publishing.
Well, the Farmer's Wife Pony Club, just a quick background on it. The magazine, from what I can tell, it's a little sketchy, was purchased by Mr. Webb about 1907, 1905, somewhere in there. And soon after that, he asked his single sister, who was also a medical doctor, believe it or not, to come in and be the editor. So soon after that happened, about 1907, they started the Farmer's Wife Pony Club. And what they were trying to do is build up the subscription base for the magazine. And so they would ask children to go around the country and sell subscriptions to the magazine. And if they did that, they'd get prizes. One prize, such as bicycles, cameras, wings. They also gave these kids rifles, believe it or not. Wow. But the grand prize was a pony. Wow. And yes, a pony, a real honest-to-goodness one. But that one started to be a problem because these poor kids would go around to these farmers and they'd say, hey, buy a subscription to my magazine, which costs about 25 cents a year, by the way. And they would say, hey, kid, they're not going to give you a pony. They're just playing with you on this one. So what they would do, they asked the kids to send in pictures of themselves with their ponies. And over 100 kids did, but they also wrote what you would call thank you letters very broadly. What the kids were doing, they would tell them what fun they had with their ponies. And frankly, I'm not an animal person, but these are the most amazing letters I've ever read. The kids are as young as from about 5 to 12 years old, perhaps, and they just say just amazing things. And there are well over 100 photographs in this, which I had to purchase from a museum. And I knew that my publishing company would never have that in their budget to do.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to self-publish it.
Yeah.
And these kids are amazing. These ponies were everything to them. And in the course of the 12 contest, they gave away about 500 ponies.
Wow. So, okay, so I'm ordering the book right now because I have to read it. So what was the, like, in formatting and doing all of that? Like, you've taken that on now for on your own accord. How is that different than the first experience?
Well, one of the editors with my first farmer's wife, she no longer worked for the company, so I hired her, and she did most of all of those jobs except a proofreader that we had.
That's amazing.
So she was able to do, she's amazing. She was able to do all the graphics and lay out the book and virtually do all of the computer work that I don't have a skill set to be able to do. But it was good because I know exactly what it takes to try to get one of these books done. And that was very helpful for me.
And then now you had to find a printer. Did you go overseas as well, the way you did? Or did you stay local, or sort of and then what about the distribution? Did you go to Checkers or Brewer, or sort of how did you get this book out in a way that was different from the others?
Well, I did. I was able to get a printer from China, and I was able to get it in the distributors of Checker and Brewer. But what I found out from looking at my royalty statements from my books, I'd say roughly 35, maybe even 40% of my books are sold overseas. And that was a market that I was never able to touch. I could not get a distributor to take, because I only had one book. I could not get a distributor to take those. So these books are virtually unknown in anywhere except I did have a contact in Australia.
Oh, interesting.
So there are a few of these books in Australia, but basically they just haven't been sold overseas at all.
Interesting. What about sort of the difference in what you saw as an author between having all the costs that you had in producing the self-published book versus the publisher? Did you feel like it was about the same in terms of, and you didn't have the reach, so with the international stuff, as you're saying. So how did you feel about the financial side of self-publishing?
I think I probably came out better with self-publishing in the end, because I don't know if most people realize authors get maybe $2 a book. That would be high.
Yeah.
So if you go with a conventional publisher, you go much more for volume than you do for what you get per book. It's very small.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just the nature of what it is.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? All right, so paper pieces. So your book is in there now. How quickly do people go completely bananas over this stuff? Because people are obsessed, right? You must have a hard time going places when you're around the quilting people, because people love the farmer's wife. It's like up there on like the, everybody, you have to do a farmer's wife, right? That's one of the things you have to do if you're like a quilter. So how did that happen? And how did you feel about all of that? Because that's it's remarkable,
Oh, it was really crazy. I was at a Quilt Expo in Wisconsin. The book came out in about September, and the Quilt Expo came out at the same time, and I was asked to speak there. And it was. I'll never forget a lady who came up to me and said, "There's a group starting who's doing your book online," and I just stared at her and went, "What are you even talking about?" Because I didn't even know that people did quilting online at that point. And I just remember looking at her, and I couldn't believe it.
So
it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's so
and
crazy.
Even before the book came out, because they do promotion for books months in advance, I got a phone call from a woman in the Netherlands she was a quilt shop owner, and this was like in June or July, and the book didn't come out till September. And she wanted to get some advanced material because she wanted to do a block of the month or block of the week, whatever it was, for her quilt shop. And that was shocking. That
Yeah.
I didn't at that point know that there was quilting overseas, that anybody who wrote a book in America, that it was sold overseas. So that was a shocker.
And then how many block, can you even keep track? Do you even know when people are doing block of the months now in terms of like, or sew-alongs online? Like, how do you feel about all of that?
It started by necessity, but my online presence is nil.
Yes, I know that. And I tried to
It
find
is.
That's funny.
Yeah, you probably won't find me. We have a large family, and when I started this, I had all I could do to pull off doing the books and taking care of my children and my husband.
Yeah.
And it started off that way. I know things have gone a lot to Facebook.
Yeah.
And I am married to a dear man who does not like Facebook at all. And I wish I could confine it to, he has no problem with the quilting world. Yeah. And I agree with him. There are some pitfalls there. And so by default, I'm not on Facebook. And yeah, I do miss out on a great deal. I wish it could just be confined to the quilting world and not the rest of Facebook, but it is what it is.
Interesting.
So I am kind of a recluse in the quilting world, I suppose.
There's always at some point in this world, there is always a sew-along of your book going on somewhere. It's kind of remarkable. Don't you find that remarkable?
That is crazy to me. It still is. It's hard for me to grasp.
Now, are there some, like, I imagine the gnome angel, I don't know if you even know, but the gnome angel, I suspect her, so some of these attract a lot of people. Do you see a bump? Can you tell when there's a sew-along going on in terms of the royalties that you're getting back?
I'm not sure if I can tell that as much, but one thing I do notice around Mother's Day and Christmas, there's quite a bump, and the reason is, and I have everything to thank of Rosemary Youngs, who thought up this idea. I certainly would never have thought it. That there's a lot of these books are sold to be given to non-quilters.
Interesting.
And that's nice because they are a standalone book that people can just read. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I have a couple more questions. What do you prefer doing? Do you like doing the paper piecing, hand piecing, or foundation piecing? Do you have a particular way you like to do this, or you're either way? What is your preference?
Okay, the first two books that I did were completely hand quilted or hand pieced. Then I started branching out to a little bit of, my Bible book. I did partially machine sewing and the template. Sorry to admit this, but I don't know how to do paper piecing.
Really? I love that.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I am, yeah, I've never been a real fan of the sewing machine, so I kind of avoid it.
Yeah.
So it's not something I really should learn. I mean, I feel bad that I don't know, but I really don't.
You're doing okay without it. I think that's, what I love, so I've done, I'm very at the beginning of your book. So of 1930s book, we got the 1930s book, and as I said, I ordered the pony book. But what I like about it is I can cut out a block. I'm going to paper piece it. I like to glue base because I like the stickiness on my fingers, and then I can get the block done in the night. So it's kind of this I like the, sitting with the family. You're not off by yourself in the sewing room. I just have started really to fall in love with paper piecing because it is such a portable, social, you're with people kind of thing. And it's so easy to sort of, if you're not quite right, to squish the fabric to make it do what it needs to do, you know?
Yeah, that's how I did it. And I never could have done the first book without hand sewing. There's no way I could have done it, because I would have been up in a sewing room and who knows what was going on when I wasn't watching. So
I don't have as much time on my own right now, so I feel like this is a way to get in some sewing without feeling like I've abandoned the family, you know?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, and then Paper Pieces, did they come to you? Did you go to them? So Paper Pieces has your templates and sets of papers so that you don't have to make copies. You can just get a set from them. I think, do they also always have a block of them? Do they have a block of the month going with you too? I can't remember. I'm looking it up. So how did that happen?
They actually contacted me.
Yeah.
Yes, they contacted me and wanted to do that. I'm sorry, when I say paper piecing and foundation piecing kind of go back and forth, what I was referring to is I don't foundation piece. I think I understand how to do paper piecing, but I do not know how to do it.
Right, you're saying the one where it's a piece of paper and then you sew on the paper, right? You take it up to the sewing machine and you put in all the different things. It's like making a puzzle. It's like a coloring book, right? Like or like a paper. Yeah, I mean, and you know, that's hard. You know, it's so funny because when my kid was 5, I started her on that because we could make animals, and we had like this Noah art book, so we could make all these different animals that were paper pieced, and it was so great for her because she saw this, like, you know, there was like, you know, I'd be like, sew on this line, and she'd do, you know, but I've kind of moved away from that myself. I don't know. I think it's just different. I think there's such a precision to it that's so beautiful, but you also have to have, you know, just a different thing. I don't know. It just feels different than, I don't know. Sometimes it's good. So yeah, so you don't do that.
I understand.
You know, yeah.
But English paper piecing is what I'm thinking of.
You do English paper piecing.
I have done it, yes. Yes, I definitely have.
And that's how you sort of constructed these blocks for the most part?
No, actually, I still do. I don't use a rotary cutter and a mat. Mm-hmm. I have one, I think, but I don't know where it is, to tell you the truth. I sit down and I have a block of wood, which is about 8 inches by 12 inches. And that's my cutting board. And I trace my templates onto that and I cut them with scissors. That's how I do my quilting.
And then do you sew the machine, or do you do it hand by hand?
Yes, and then I mark some people can get away without marking a 1/4 inch seam. I never seem to be able to pull it off, so I mark the 1/4 inch seam, and I sew those by hand. When I do hand sewing, some of the blocks for my newest book that's coming out, I have done some of the easier ones. I have done totally with sewing machine.
So interesting. So you weren't doing paper piecing and you weren't doing foundation piecing. You were doing it the way women have done it for forever, which is making the pieces, sewing them by hand. So interesting, really interesting.
And that is kind of one of my little missions here, is that while the rotary cutter and the mat are a good thing, and I would never want them to disappear or anything like that, but it limits you to what blocks you can do, because you don't want to cut out a block that's 3 3/16 inches.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be very even, and that lets out so many good blocks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it makes so much sense, because some of your pieces are so small. Then I think, how are you going to take a piece of cardboard and have enough with a lip that it isn't just like overlapping in crazy ways? But that's not what you're doing. You're taking that teeny tiny piece and then putting a 1/4 inch seam around it and then stitching on that line. And so you don't have that problem by doing it the way you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, that's really cool.
There's several blocks in the 1920s books that are a 5-patch or 25-patch, however you want to put it, in a 6-inch block. Well, it doesn't come out mathematically well at all. Because some people have said, why are you doing the templates? Why don't you just do everything rotary cutting? Well, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You can't.
So small.
I couldn't do many of these blocks, so many of them, and that to me is the fun, to do a block that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Because it is an otter shape.
Okay.
Or
so
it's not.
I did the yeah, that's so cool. So there was a sew along called hand piecing sew along, and we were one of the sponsors. We gave away interviews. We don't have anything. We're just such a little thing. We don't have anything to give away, but people came on and chatted about their experiences. But I think I'm going to try the way you do it, because there are these, I was really freaking out when I was looking ahead, because I've done a few of them, but they get some pretty small pieces. So I think that's so cool. So I think if I'm right, I would take the cardboard that I already have printed, cut them out, and then I could trace it onto the fabric so that I could then have the 1/4-inch seam and then just hand piece it. Is that what you're saying?
Right, yes. You have to cut it out, but then you have to add that 1/4-inch seam once it's cut out.
Yeah.
And to me, and it's worked really well, because if you do a book, the photography is so close up, and if your seams don't match, I mean, mine aren't perfect, but they're pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And the reason they're pretty accurate is because of the hand sewing. Because you can be really exact. See, I don't use a seam ripper. You don't need one, because if you make a mistake, you've got 1 or 2 stitches, and you just go right back and fix it.
Interesting. Now,
so it's not that hard.
Do you have a favorite needle that you use? A favorite size needle that you use?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. I try to go for a very thin needle, though, just because that's just more comfortable for me. But I don't I use more of an embroidery needle. I don't use a typical quilting needle. They're too short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like long needles that are thin, long needles, or even a little thicker than.
Yes.
Interesting. And what about thread? Do you feel like you need to have really thin thread, or do you have a particular thread that you like to use when you're hand piecing?
At first, I was using hand quilting thread to piece with. I don't know that I don't anymore. I think I was much more worried that it was going to fall apart on me, but I don't have that worry. I honestly just use standard thread. I'm not really particular.
That's so cool. Oh my goodness, this is so very cool. Well, this is awesome. Okay, so the pony book. So has anyone ever done a sew along with your pony book? And do you have like more copies of it? Or like what happens if there was people who wanted to do the pony book? Is it available or?
Yes, it still is, but I'm going to be running out of books fairly soon, and it will probably be going out of print. There's 90, these are 8-inch blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the only time, well, I shouldn't say that. Of my first 4 books, it's the only one that I did the earlier, the 8-inch blocks. Yeah. But it is available on Amazon. It is there.
Yeah, I just purchased it.
You just saw that. And what? I have another book coming out this spring that uses 6 and 8-inch blocks. Really? So that's the only other time I use 8-inch blocks.
Interesting.
Yes, my publishing company went bankrupt this year.
Huh.
And we were in the middle of doing this new book. And it took a long time to find out what was going to happen. And the company finally got sold to Penguin Random House. And so we got very delayed in it. It was originally the book was supposed to come out this fall, but they have pushed it back to spring.
Oh, I would love to. Once it comes, will you come chat? Would you come speak with us again and chat about that book when it comes out? It would be really great. We'd love to.
Oh, yeah.
Be back on.
Yes,
And we are looking for something new to do in January or February, whenever. We kind of start after Mardi Gras because we're in New Orleans. So our New Year nothing happens until after Mardi Gras in our town. So, but we are looking for something new to do. We did Jen Kingswell's Gypsy Wife is our first one, and that was pretty successful. And now I want something fun and something interesting and different. So, and your stuff is so much fun. It really is. I like the fact that you're using, I mean, for me as I'm a copyright professor, so I totally love the fact that you are using common blocks, you recognize copyright, you're adding stories to it. It's just like, you're like, this is just really cool. Your stuff is great. So we'll have to
thank you.
keep chatting. Now, do you go to market or any of those things, or you don't have to do that?
No, my publishing company usually went. I have thought about it, and now that the kids are older, I might try it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, you're amazing. You're such a great story. What a great story. Oh my goodness.
Oh, well, thanks.
So would you do it all again if as you drive home and you're irritated that your foot is in a black boot? Would you do it again? No.
Oh, yes, and I really, it's one of the lessons I think God's trying to tell me to, just go with stuff when things could not go your way and stop complaining so much, maybe. I think I agree. I want to learn that lesson. So
it's kind of amazing. How did your kids react? I guess the last question is, because you hid it from them while you were doing it. How did they respond to all of this that's happened to you?
Oh, everybody was kind of surprised. They really were. And, some of the younger ones don't even remember pretty much before I did this. So they're kind of used to it.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of strange when you say mom, I think they just, oh yeah, that's something mom does, which is fine because this is something what mom does, but she's got a lot of other mom things that she does, and they're important.
That is the essence of being a mom, I think, like I love the day. I love the day of being a mom because there's so many different parts to it. And then if you throw in, if you're writing a book or you're working or whatever, like that's just one more part of the day. And I think that's what makes it so fun. And I don't know, my favorite time is carpool or taking them to school, taking my kid to school or their friends to school. Cause you get to be with them and hear all their ridiculous day, like, I don't know. I just kind of embrace I like being the whole mom. I like the life. It's complicated. There's a lot going on, but I don't know. I wouldn't have it for sure. So
yeah, I wouldn't have traded it for anything.
Right. So thank you so much for this. This is really great. So what I'm going to do, I've ordered the pony book, so I'm super psyched. So I'm going to be completely conflicted because I'm going to probably want to do that one instead because every time a new book arrives, I'm like, I need to do that one now. And I'm going to look up the copyright stuff for you on the 30s book to sort of see what we find out. And I'll tell you what I find out. And send you some info. So yeah. Do you review this? Are you cool with us posting this, or do you want it not posted, or are you okay with what we talked about?
I'm fine. I'm fine at all. Yeah. Did you say that you already purchased a Pony Club book?
I did, as we were talking. Yes.
Oh, did you? Because I was going to send you one. Okay, that's okay.
I would love to send me one because then we would send it out to someone as a fan. But that's
fine. But I really appreciate it. Yes, and I'm glad because it's my favorite book. It has to be.
We really are looking for something interesting to do. So I would love to think about the pony book or your new book because we explore people. So what happens is a whole bunch of people they either can make their own or they can make just one block and send it in. But the idea is to understand copyright through all these different things. So because you're so immersed in it and you do it, it just helps. I just think your stuff is really cool. So yeah. And I don't know, it's all about understanding things. I'm writing a book called Quilting Copyright. So I've been working on that for about six months on trying to understand, what you did, basically.
Oh, yeah. But what you're talking, that everything changed in the last 10 years. I mean, it just, my expression is, if it's on the internet, it's mine, and you know, if they see something on the internet, it's automatically theirs. They can, the copyright stuff. It was hard when it was just books, but now, are you dealing with copyright online also, or what people are doing?
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, everything. Both like piracy and infringement, but also like when you, like what you did. So you did know something a little bit about copyright, and you were able to figure out that you didn't need permission for the first book, or for the pony book for that matter, right? Because it was 1915.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
yeah. This is totally off the record.
Okay.
But one of the reasons I did get offline was I had an incident with, this is back when blogs were going on, and, or well, much more so. And there was a lady who was printing, she was posting every page of my book.
Ugh.
She was doing something online.
Yeah.
And somebody alerted me to this. I wasn't paying attention. Somebody, and I wrote her and said, you know, when you do that, no one has to buy the book.
That's right.
They miss out on the stories, which are great, for one. But nobody has to buy the book. And, you know, we had this conversation going back and forth. And before I knew it, she wrote on her blog that I was threatening to sue her. And I looked, her biography said that she worked in a lawyer's office. So maybe that's where that came up. And I never, ever even went there. I thought, I wasn't going to sue her. Come on. I mean, silly anyway. But I never would have done it. But I can tell you 100% I never said such a thing. And what I got back in there was so sad, because I got a lot of, or you could read the comments on there saying, she is horrible. What a terrible author she is. And I just went, you know, I'm done.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel that way about evals, student evals. Like I've told the vice dean, like my year two, because, you know, everybody's like super nice. And then one person's like, I didn't like the way she combed her hair or whatever. And it's just like, I just was like, you know, I don't need the compliments. If there's something you want me to change, you can read my evals and tell me what I need to do. But I don't need the trauma of somebody being mean or nasty. You know, it's just like,
right.
Like that's not.
That was one of the reasons I kind of backed out there. And that was before, is this true? I'm silly asking you, but is most of the stuff with Farmer's Wife on Facebook now? That's kind of my understanding.
I'll do a search and see. I'll find out. I'll do some investigation for you and I'll send it back. You know, because the blocks themselves aren't protectable. You know that because you got them for Barbara Breckman, right? But it's the book itself that's protectable, right? The selection, arrangement, all the things you did to make it its thing is protectable. So I don't know. I'll have my law students do a search and see what we can find, and we'll give you a report back. Before we end, I know we were supposed to end, and we're officially ended. I thought I would tell you, I just wrote this play fair copyright policy for quilt shops. And the idea is for them we'll make it kind of a nice size so people can read it and make it pretty. But it has 6 rules. And I thought I'd see what you thought about it because you're like the second person to hear it. But it's super short. So and see if this helps you as somebody who in the industry and had those issues. I would love to see what so can I read it to you really fast? It's like 3, it's very fast.
Oh, yes.
Okay, cool. So number 1, feel free to snap photos in our shop, fabrics, and samples. And then on the back, it explains that you get a non-exclusive license to photograph it and the trade dress of the shop, but you're not transferring any other rights. So you're giving them permission to do stuff. Then number 2, share on social media. Make sure to credit the pattern designer and our store. So again, requiring them to have right of attribution if it's, you know, if they're taking a snapshot of a farmer's wife quilt that's hanging in their shop, to say it's a farmer's wife quilt and it's in Mise en Mise shop, so that they connect that with the social media. And number 3, respect the pattern maker, buy the pattern, they worked hard to make it. Number 4, make what you want with the fabric. Number 5, we love to see your creations, come share them with us. And then number 6 is the most legally one. We reserve the right to ask you to refrain from committing copyright piracy while shopping in our store. So I've heard from the shops that people are coming in and they're taking a book out and then they're starting to take pictures in their phone. So this would be able to get them to say, like, because when they do that and the shop doesn't stop them, the shop is potentially liable for copyright. Now, is anyone going to sue them? No, probably not. But if you got, like, not you, but like, let's say some author was freaky and saw it happening in a shop, they could sue the shop. So the idea is just to have, like, play fair, be nice to each other, don't be awful, and respect the people that are making these books and patterns, because that's how they make their livelihood, or extra spending money for their family, or just sort of hard work, the work they put into it. So that's kind of the idea that we're going for.
Can you read number 5 again? I missed it.
Sure. Number 5 is, we love to see your creations. Come share them with us. So it's encouraging them to give the shop a non-exclusive license to take pictures of whatever they bring in. So again, sort of the back of it is the legal part of it, but by posting it, it allows them to basically, the legal rules are up and posted, so there's notice, kind of like the way libraries do it, you know?
Yeah, I really like that. And I got to tell you, I am so appreciative of what you're doing, and I'm sure I'm speaking for every pattern designer or book person, because there are some people who don't care about the rules. There are, and I've seen them. But there are a ton of people who just don't know them.
They just don't know. Right, they just don't know. I mean, that's the thing, is that I don't think they're trying to be bad citizens. They just don't know. So, yeah, I think it's interesting.
And people have asked me, can we do this or can we do that? And let me throw this out at you as my rule of thumb has been, if what you're doing is causing people not to purchase the book, then you've over the line.
That's right.
And is that too simplistic?
No, that's the line that copyright puts, and then we call it market failure. I mean, well, not market failure, but are you, so if you're taking, like, if it's exactly what you said, like, would you have purchased that book? Well, then you probably should purchase it. Let's say I'm in a different context. Let's say I'm taking, I don't know, one of the patterns that you have in here, and I'm looking at like 50 books on how they do that same pattern, right? That same block. That's really different. Me saying, oh, I'm just going to photocopy the entire book, right? So if it's a market replacement, that whatever you're doing is a market replacement, then you should be buying the book. Like, does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, yeah, it's exactly what you said. It just in copyright language, right? So yeah, I totally.
Right, it's in different words. Because
exactly.
you don't want. Go ahead.
It's all good.
You don't want people. I would not want to say, don't take a picture of any page in my books. I mean, because Amazon does that. You look at the look inside thing and you say, hey, I like this book.
Right. Exactly.
Or I don't like this book. And so you don't want to go there. It's just that line of, I have everything, I don't need it anymore. That's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
So I appreciate your work hugely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I really do. It's great.
It's funny how hard it is to do. Don't you feel that way? Like, it seems like it's a lot of work to get to the simple. And so we're hoping to have it done by, this fall. So, but I think it's
okay.
This little bit we're going to have.
Oh yeah.
That one's easy. I'm just putting it into a pretty format now so that people can download it or get a laminated copy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the idea.
Well, with my new book that's coming out in the spring, they have said that the first Farmer's Light came out in 2009. It's been 10 years now. CDs are old school now. Yeah. Technology lasted 10 whole years. They're going to do a download for this.
Oh, that's great. I think that's awesome. Yeah.
And it is great. What's the piracy on that going to be?
What's the what?
Gigantic. What the piracy on the download?
Yeah, so are they going to, I imagine they're doing a key, right? They're going to do a specific key so that people, but then once they have it, are they going to be able to make copies of it? I don't know. It could be crazy. So, I mean, that's our worry too on our book. Ironically, we're very much like, yeah, we don't really want to put it out as a PDF, our books, because it's too easy to copy. But it's such a common thing now So I don't know. It's interesting. We just got a copy of EQ8, and I thought that their policy was really interesting because they said you can put on as many computers as you want, but only the way they did it is that you can only have 2 active accounts. So it'll be interesting to be a publisher, which I think is really generous actually and really great, right? Because we don't all have, so it'll be interesting to see what your publisher does and what mechanisms are available to keep the piracy down. But piracy is going to happen. That's the problem with digital. Is like you're just giving them, like, how easy is it to, they don't have to do anything. They just, I don't know. So yeah, I always find PDFs and digital downloads a little bit troubling, but I love the convenience. So yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The only thing they said is it won't be searchable.
Interesting.
I don't know how they stop that.
Yeah.
But they said they could configure it so you can't search it and then just download it. But, I'm over it. It's whatever they do. You can't completely stop anything. So I'm fine with it. I'm happy to have the book out, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, and also it's a good learning experience so that if you do it again, you're like, yeah, no, or like, yeah, it's not a problem, right? Like, it's hard to say. I mean, truthfully, the patterns, at least for the book that I saw, the patterns are great, but you can get the pattern anywhere, right? Like, it's the convenience of the pattern and what you're doing, but it's the book itself that's so beautiful and why you buy it. So it isn't because it isn't because of the CD, it's because of the book. And that might help you. And you know what I mean? Like, you can get these, as you said, you could get it in Robert Brackman in a block base or wherever you're getting them. So that's not the value, the book itself that's valuable, So.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, because those women have a lot to say. So,
yes,
and children, I should. Yeah. So, okay.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to cut out the part that you said it was off the record, and I can have you review it, but it'll all be fine. I'll let you know when we're posting it, and just feel free to reach out to me and come back when the new book is out. I would love it, and I'd love to see a copy beforehand if you want me to make some before you chat, because I love doing that too. It's such a different experience. And I'm going to try the hand piecing. So when we talk again, I'll have to tell you how that goes. So, but yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend-Gard. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.